So thanks for having me. But let me start with an observation or a point I would like to make here. What is the problem with established democracies at the moment? What is my perspective on this? And here I'm of course not the only one, but maybe referring back to Colin Crouch with his book Post-Democracy, he mainly argues there that the problem is that a political class is in power, self-referential, and those are concerned mainly with business interests. One can summarize it very shortly in that way. It's maybe a rather a bit a polemical book, but I share his observation there, and here a statement he makes. Maybe you can read it yourself for a moment. So there is somehow a lack of confidence in what the state can, and I mean, in Swiss democracy, not everything is working badly or so, but when it comes to AI or managing IT infrastructure, I see that he makes a point that has some empirical evidence also in Switzerland. In a similar vein, Klaus Offe speaks of the prison of the market, and what he argues is that there is a lack of normative justification of the current realities and the preponderance of the market over the sphere of the politics. Can be social rights, political redistribution, sustainability, and I very much agree to this aspect. What is the consequence of this? Among other, he argued already in 2013, the rise of populism can also lead to increased participation. Those are all consequences of this dominance or prison of the market over politics, and I agree very much to this observation. For instance, why do we have the social media we have? Why do we accept social media that are bad for our teenagers, particularly teenager girls? Why can we not bring in our values there? Why, for instance, the commentaries on social media, why do they not disappear after 30 seconds, like an oral commentary? I have many ideas and I would love to help or co-design the design of our social media. Why do we have the same social media as in the United States? We have different values and we don't want to have it in the same way maybe as the Americans or as Chinese. And I really don't understand why we live in these current realities, and certainly it's not justified. So I have a clear opinion there. Also, Kundani makes the same point. He says we are hollowing out democracies, and neoliberalism is one aspect or one reason for this. Others speak of hyperglobalization. So I would say that this is the problem, and as a group here, maybe we could put that on our research agenda and maybe simulate the consequences of this aspect. How would the world look different if the design would be different? How can we, what would be, for instance, the consequence if we would invest in non-proprietary IT infrastructure? What would be better, or how could we do it differently that at the end the profit is not in individual hand, but in a collective, in a societal hands? So Andre was speaking about like what a democracy needs to fulfill. I think the individual freedom is fulfilled quite strongly, but where is equality and where is collective freedom? So at the macro governance perspective, I think we should ask and raise questions and say, what can we do differently? What would be the consequences? Also, Zuboff speaks in that same line. I see that going into the same direction. And here, a report of the European Union speaking about the danger of unchecked concentration of data and power, also in the perspective of artificial intelligence. So that is certainly a danger I see. For instance, we could also introduce a referendum on a code. So saying if we don't agree with the algorithmic system, we raise a referendum and we want to vote about certain mechanisms in Switzerland. Why do we not have this option also? Or you might certainly have other ideas. What could we change? And we should maybe think of what are the most important aspects we should introduce or institutions here in Europe or in Switzerland. Those might be, and certainly those are others than in the United States or in China or India. So we should go for variety there. When we, Fung also talking about participation makes a similar argument that this domination by minority groups, such as wealthy or industrially concentrated interests, that's the danger for democratic system. Now here, I did an analysis on the algorithmic system of Facebook. How does it work? Here, that's not yet on social media, but on traditional media. If we compare in a vote in Switzerland, we have different arguments, different frames, pro and contra camp. What is brought in by the elites, by political actors, but also by NGOs and so on. What is represented in the news media, and here you see it's more or less proportional. So what the political actors prepare is very important. The news media then proportionally reports about it. So if the humanitarian tradition frame is important for the political actors, that will be also important in the news media. So that is a norm we have that journalists should balance out, but should also report about what the political actors bring in. Now, when we look at social media, this proportionality is not there at all. That's an example of Facebook. The first line is the distribution of the seats in the parliament. And then the second line is the Facebook pages. So who has a Facebook page and also in line or marked by the political affiliation, so rather proportional. And then who does posts? So who posts something on Facebook? You can see also still quite proportional to the seats. But then what happens here? One party basically makes it all, or the winner takes it all, very disproportional, very not in line with our values of power sharing in Switzerland. That's a no-go. Why do we accept something like this? I cannot understand this. The same for gender. One can say, okay, the first one is voted. It has a legitimate basis at least. male and female, then who has a page on Facebook, who posts something, but who gets interactions. And here this line is, here we have the algorithmic system that causes this interaction. And again, the winner takes it all. So this is really, not how it should be. And we accept this. And the reason is we have no saying in it at all. Where are those leaders in the public debate, for instance? Can I discuss this with a software engineer of Facebook? Where are they in the talk shows? They remain absent, and they can do so without any consequences. And this is not what we should accept, I think. And of course, there is a lack of legitimacy or trust in social media, not surprisingly, but of course, that is well mirrored here. The Republic had a series on articles, investigative journalism, how Google established presence in Zurich, also quite informative, I would recommend, and it also shows quite well this dominance or importance of the market over politics. Now, when we look at the public debate on AI, we investigated this with students. You can see, first of all, an increase. Here, it ended in 2023. Before ChatGPT, we will, or we are coding at the moment the debate in 2024 with ChatGPT. But what we already can report here is the standing. Standing means who has a saying, who can speak in the news media, who is reported about. And we see mostly it's journalists, then the economy, science, it's mainly from a technical aspect, so maybe explaining something about AI, but not social scientists. Civil society, politics, and law and order is only present to a little amount. They only have a marginal share of voices. When we look at the framing, so how is this debate structured, or what perspectives are dominant there? Here we have different frames, boon and bane, progress and economic consequences. Those all are not about ethical aspects or values. Those aspects come here, or also accountability. Also here we see those aspects are discussed only to a little amount. Here we distinguish also, is it from a pro perspective or a contra perspective? You see mainly from a pro perspective. In those frames you cannot really distinguish, or it doesn't make sense to make this distinction. There it's clear in which direction the frame goes. That is why we didn't differentiate it there. So also here you see aspects of what is good for society, what are our values, how should we design, those kind of questions are not in the public debate. And that means also that it has not such an importance for everyday life, or for people not really into that topic. And I make this point because that is my topic. How are public debate structured? How can we generate dialogue in the news media? And here I come from Swiss Democratic Votes. I developed the model, and one can generalize it also to other debates. But in all debates, it's important that some actors will prepare it and go in front, and others are following those actors. And it depends on the institutions on how this debate is structured. And in general, also in direct democracy, long-term and global perspectives have it more difficult to come into the public debate. But those are already well-structured debates. So talking about AI or debates in a non-institutional settings have it even more difficult. So we should care even more that we have ethical aspects or those kind of questions represented there. Now, what could be solutions or how should we deal with it? I already said that we can think of meta-regulation, and Joe Stiglitz also already published a proposal. So we need a progressive economy, so one that respects honesty, kindness, other regardingness, cooperativeness, and empathy. Yes, certainly that can help. Yes, I think we need also to care for and build institutional trust. And how can we do so? We can do so if we bring in a congruence between the norms embedded in institutions. As I said, for instance, in the design of social media, what are my values and how can they be there represented in the design of social media, also for AI, etc. What is the motivation of the trustee? Is it just to keep us as long on the page as possible? Or where can we bring in a motivation also for the volonté générale, so the interest for the societal welfare? And how can we make office holders accountable? And this needs to be aligned with each other. And if that is the case, we can build trust. And we should always keep that in mind. So how can we build AI or algorithmic systems that help us to build trust? If we don't respect this congruence, if this is not congruent, then we don't build trust. That's very easy, actually. So possibly we could invest in non-proprietary IT ecosystems. You certainly have other idea, but we also might need to prove this empirically. I spoke to the leader of the NRP 77. Could that be a recommendation? And the answer was, if you can show that this is better, I'm happy to bring this in, but how can you show this? Or what would be a way to show this and other scenarios? I think here we could make a contribution. And the importance of cooperation here, you see in this mauve color, the number of employees in Switzerland, in those who are employed by large enterprises, by corporations. It's quite a lot. It's almost a fourth of employees in Switzerland work in corporations or at these places. And so I think that this matters, and they give a line. So if those corporations remain absent, they also produce rather apolitical citizens, because they say that's not important. Our interest is the shareholder value, and that is what counts. So here, I think we also have leverage possibility. Now, we can, or participation, increased participation can also be a consequence of the problem and can help or contribute to solve it. And here the question comes, for what? Where should we involve people and for what? And of course, we don't want to involve them in trivial things. So that would cause disappointment. It's a waste of resources, and it's non-inspiring to involve people, for instance, in non-important decisions. We have to care for legitimacy. So at the end, we are in a democracy and we want to produce and we need to produce legitimate decisions because people need to accept those decisions, but that does not mean that everybody needs to participate at every moment. Sometimes we want to do other things or so, but at the end we need to have legitimate decisions. And here I would like to make the point that this is a multi-dimensional concept. Input, whether you can bring in your voice, how can you do this matters, how you experience the whole decision-making process matters, and the result also. If you always are on the loser side, that also is a problem. And somehow also one dimension cannot fully compensate for the other. It is possible to a certain extent, but we have to care basically for all three levels. And here I bring shortly the example we did in Aarau. So we actually implemented a participatory budgeting process, and what we emphasized or looked at is the voting method. And here I use a slide by Josh. This is such a nice, he's a gifted slide producer, but it shows that when you think about voting, you have two different elements, voting input and voting aggregation, and both matter. So how do you cast a vote and how are those votes aggregated? With regard to voting input, here are different options. That's from an experiment. Karina was also involved or had the lead here. Just that you have an idea, one can vote in a very different options. Illustrates some of them, thumb up, thumb down, or one can choose or rank or give points. We ended up distributing 10 points because that is like a good way in terms of cognitive load also. So people could vote on 33 projects at the end by distributing 10 points. And we did not aggregate the vote in a majoritarian way, so just accumulating the points, but we used the methods of equal shares, basically distributing the budget to the voters, and then those gave their votes to the projects, and more expensive projects needed a higher amount of votes to get accepted. I don't go into the detail here, but the result is clear. Here you see the districts in Aarau, how many projects did they hand in, how many got accepted, and here you see every district got at least one project accepted. With this method, with a majoritarian method, it would have been very different. Than projects of the whole city or of the center would have been only accepted. Here you also see the overview of the different projects, 33 projects, in which districts, on which topic, and what are the costs, and how many points did they get. And here the result with the majoritarian so-called standard method, and here with the method we used, methods of equal shares. And you see here 17 projects won with that method, whereas with the majoritarian method only 7 would win. The B project did not make it at the end because that was very costly. So it had not enough votes for such high costs. But then we achieved really quite a high level of legitimacy, and that's maybe why the bees, the honey is going to Dirk to have it still estimated what they did. Here also you see the points, budget spent with methods of equal share, and here as a comparison, what would be the case with the standard method. This is much more representative for the points than this solution, so also here we have a higher legitimacy. And yeah, I end here and say thanks to all and to the many people involved in that project. Thanks a lot.